Okay, here we are. Hello, Psych 100 students. It's Dr. Bob Bauer talking to you. You can tell I got a little frog in my throat, so bear with me as we plunge into this wonderful thing called memory. Can you just get it ready for exam 3? Now, I'm going to go through this lecture fairly quickly, and the good news is that you can stop it at any time. In fact, even better news is, anytime you want to walk away from my lecture right now, do it. But if you get confused, go back. Also, this should overlap a lot with what's in your book. So let's take a look at what we got and plunge in. So you should have your lecture guide next to you. This is going to help you as we go through these steps, okay? So the topic is memory. So the first part of it is 3 stages of memory. You see the first one there called encoding. Encoding. Years ago they used to call it acquisition. Basically what it means is that you're first getting the information, from out there in here. Okay. And so right now you are taking information in by hearing my voice and by listening and watching me give this talk. So encoding, what does that involve? Well, 2 parts. One part of this encoding process is called sensory memory. What that means is that information comes in through one of your 5 senses and it's gone in a flash. In most cases we're talking about hearing or seeing. It could be touch, could be taste, could be smell, but we know that the primary way that we get a lot of information is through hearing and visual. So how does sensory memory work? Well, it's information that comes in, and unless we do something with it, it's going to be gone in a flash. Have you ever met someone at a party? You walk up and go, "Hi, my name's so-and-so," and they tell your name, their name, and then you realize a few seconds later, it's gone. Well, welcome to the real world, because often that information is just gone in a flash. Okay? Or someone says your name in the middle of someplace, and you go, "What?" Okay? And then you don't even think later that they said your name because the name just came out and it's gone. Okay? So sensory memory, stimuli that come in from the world and then impact our brain, and unless we do something with it, it's gone in a flash. A second part of this encoding process is called working memory. Years ago they used to call it short-term memory, but they felt that working memory was like a better term for it. And so what that means now is that you've taken in these sensory stimuli. You said this person, you'd have heard this person's name, and then it's in your brain, in primarily your hippocampus, as we know, and it's going to stay there for anywhere from a few seconds, in other words, a little longer than sensory memory, and up to 15, 20, 30 minutes, or maybe more. Okay. Working memory, short-term memory. We know that there is this thing that is a limited amount of memory when we look at people who've experienced a sudden blow to the head and they get knocked out, and they then wake up after 20 seconds or 20 days. And what we find is that they have what's called retrograde amnesia. That is, from the moment they were hit on back, they can remember, or they can't remember, because that information that was put in your short-term memory was jarred loose. Years ago when I was a kid, probably 14 or so, I went with a bunch of friends. It was during November. I remember the ground was like frozen, and we decided to play football. And so 4 guys on each team. They kicked off to us. I caught the ball, ran down the field. Just when I was going over the goal line, this guy tackles me. Now I don't remember it at the time, but I must have hit my head when he tackled me, because I got up. It was a touchdown. We lined up again. We kicked off to them. They caught the ball. We tackled them. They started to line up for their first play, and I said, you know, I can't remember walking to the game. And then I remember getting up after Larry tackled me. And I don't remember anything in between. So literally from the moment of impact back, retrograde amnesia, that information was only in my short-term memory, only in my working memory, and it got like shaken loose, and it never comes back. Sometimes you hear, oh, this person had this traumatic brain injury, and they've forgotten what led up to it, and maybe someday it'll come back. Well, you need to yell at your TV and say, that's retrograde amnesia. It's never going to come back. Okay? Rare situations it might, but for the most part, it's gone because it was only in this temporary holding place in your brain called your working memory or short-term memory. Now, a lot of what happens to us during our day, we forget most of, right? And in a way, it's good. Your book talked about the fact that, in many ways, it's good to forget things, right? Can you imagine, think of every hotel or motel you've ever been in, or every classroom that you've been in, and you first found it because you had the room number. Can you imagine remembering all of the room numbers that you've ever had in your life, right? So it's good that a lot of those memories just fade out. We know, for example, that working memory does a fairly good job of remembering 5 to 7 things, at a time. So things like a phone number, 206-592-3414, right? That that 592-3414 is about those 7 numbers, and we can hold them in our memory. But you know what? Unless we are going to transfer it into our long-term memory, it just goes away. All right. So once we then move information into from working memory into long-term memory, we call that storage, right? And so theoretically, once something is in your long-term memory, are you ready for this? It's there forever. You go, no, it's not. Well, theoretically, yes, it is. But what we find is that there are reasons that we can't go and pull something out of our long-term memory that was there. And there's all kinds of reasons, as we're going to talk about, for forgetting. So 2 types of ways that we pull out information from our long-term memory is called retrieval. So what do we got? We got these 3 stages. We got the acquisition stage, this thing called encoding this information. We got the storage, where we're taking that information from our working memory and putting it into storage, into our long-term memory. And then we got retrieval, which is going into our memory, pulling it back out again. So what do we know? We know that there's 2 types of retrieval. One type, as you see on there, called recognition. Think for a moment of the word cognition. You're going, wait a minute. Cognitive. Cognition. Yeah, I've seen that word before. Yeah, what does that refer to? Cognition. Oh yeah, thinking. To know. So recognition means to know again, right? And so what happens in recognition is that a stimulus presents itself. You see it, you hear it, you smell it, you taste it, you touch it, and then your brain goes, have I ever experienced this before? And it's a very simple answer. It's either yes or no. That is recognition. The stimulus is in front of you. You're trying to decide, have I seen this before? Yes or no? Okay, what's another type of retrieval? It's called recall. Recall. So what goes into recall is that we have no stimulus. We go into our memory and we pull the memory out. So, I want you to think for a moment about the answer to this question. Because I'm sure you've heard people ask this question. How come it's easier for me to remember faces than it is names? Now think what you know about recognition and about recall. All right? Which one's easier? Well, of course, recognition, because the thing's right in front of you. Which one's easier? Seeing a face in front of you and asking yourself, have I seen this face before? And what are the two answers? Yes or no, right? What's trying to remember a name? What are you doing? Recall, right? So of course it's easier to remember faces than it is names, because these are two different types of retrieval. Recognizing the face, recalling the name. Now, if you met someone and you said, I've seen you before. Now let me see what your name is. And the person then said, well, it's either Melvin, George, or Zelda, right? What would you be doing? Recall. Recognition. So, and they're taking away that whole recall factor, right? And you go, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. That's familiar because, yeah, test questions. Alright, what's the answer? What kind of test questions are recall test questions? Right, true, false, multiple choice. There's a statement here. Do I recognize this as a true statement or a false statement? Or multiple choice? Which one of these 5 choices do I recognize as being the correct one? And what's the other one? Yep, recall. What's that? Essay questions. And as you can see on all the exams that I give, all 8 of them this quarter, you will be given both types of questions. Recall questions, recognition questions. Got that? So there it is. 3 stages in the memory process. Encoding, where you get this flash of memory, called sensory memory. Then we keep it in your brain for several seconds or maybe up to a half hour. Short-term memory, also called working memory. But then, if nothing's done with it, it's gone. Gone forever. But then, if you're able to do something with it and put it into your what? Yeah, into your long-term memory. Then hopefully later you're going to be able to get to the 3rd stage, which is retrieval. 2 types of retrieval: recognition, recall. Got it? Let me take a break.